Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. I'm Barney Hoskins and I'm in Hammersmith with my colleagues Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
And Martin Collier.
Hi, Barney.
And Jasper Merrison-Bowie.
Hello, Barney.
And joining us for this episode in person is music industry legend Rob Dickins. Welcome, Rob.
Hello, Barney.
In the 27 years that Rob worked for Warner Brothers here in the UK, he signed and shaped the careers of some of the biggest stars in the history of pop music, including Prince, Madonna, Cher, Enya, Rod Stewart, many more. We'll be talking about some, if not all of those artists, and we'll be listening to clips from an audio interview with the late, great Leon Russell. First, Rob, let's go back to the beginning of your pop life to cite the Prince song, because you were sort of embedded in the music business in many ways, weren't you?
Yeah, it's all I've ever known, basically. My father, who after the war and into the early 50s, worked on layout and printing at the Melody Maker. And in 1952, a guy called Maurice Kinn bought the Accordion Times and Music Express and wanted to sort of do a rival paper to the Melody Maker, and he hired Dad to do the advertising, the layout, the printing, all the kind of technical stuff. And so from 1952, so before my memory starts, there was an NME in the house. And when I was at school, of course, I got the NME the day before it hit the newsstand. So through the 60s, in my teenage years, you know, I became like a leader of the music people at school because I had the NME. So yes, it goes right back to then. And also Dad did the Pole Winners concert. So he was the kind of active runner of the Pole Winners concert. So I met the Beatles and the Stones when I was 12. I remember being in the corridor backstage at Wembley with my dad, and I was in my school uniform. And he said, "Oh, boys, come say hello to my son." And it was the Beatles. So I go back to 1962 to meet the Beatles. So constantly there was that. The other thing he did is, you know, as I was growing up, the review singles. So, when they reviewed the singles every week, they would just leave them in the office. So he'd gather them up. And we're talking probably 12 records a week came out in those days. Yeah. So he'd come back with a briefcase and just empty them on the table. My brother and I would sort of
divvy them up.
Yeah. So we had A labels again before they were in the shop. So we had. I remember when Please Please Me came in. So it was before, and in those days radio didn't play up front of release. So we were hearing every new record before it actually hit the shops. So. And then as I got older and I read about Bob Dylan, I was 13, and I said, I'd love Freewheeling by Bob Dylan. So, he just rang up his friend at CBS and came home with Freewheeling. So, I had a kind of free access to albums as well as singles.
So you were like in the market for freebies long before the first
journalists came along. Before I knew what freebie meant.
Yeah,
it was just my method of attaining music.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider another career?
Yeah, my mother, because I'm sure we got onto my brother, but my father was music business, my brother was music business, and it's all encompassing. You have no life. You commit to the music business. And I went to university and I studied politics and Russian. And she thought, well, at least, the first boy the first family member of Dickens going to university, at least he won't be in the music business. but at university, I was social secretary for 2 years, chairman events, chairman of the folk club, chairman of the jazz club, chairman of the film society.
Yeah, nothing to do with music at all.
Yeah. I had my, the president of the student union had an office, and I had an office with a red telephone, which in 1969 was quite something. And I used to, I had this office with all posters up and stuff. So I kind of spent most of my time in that office.
Which university was this?
Loughborough.
Which, of course, was a lot of gigs were put on Loughborough. You must have promoted a lot of those.
I did Pink Floyd, I did Faces, Motley Crue, Paul Free.
Earth.
I did Earth, yeah.
Earth.
Yeah.
later Black Sabbath.
Is that right?
But it was a Wednesday night, and they were still called Earth.
Gosh, you've done your research. Yeah.
Yeah, we're Earth.
They were managed by someone in Birmingham, and he kind of kept ringing us up. Because when you had the red phone, you got phone calls from managers and agents, trying to put the game. Because it was the hall held, I think, about 1,800 people.
Wow. So that was a proper gig.
Yeah,
it was a gig.
I remember as a melody maker reader in the late 60s, Loughborough was one of those regular big student venues.
Yeah.
And Chris Briggs was at Leicester University, so we had this 18-mile clause. So if you played Loughborough, you couldn't play Leicester within, I think, 6 months or a year. So it was because I remember he got the Who, and I couldn't get the Who because he had the same thing back to us. So,
even your brother, though your brother had signed the Who.
Yeah, but my brother was 17, 18. My dad always said about my brother is if he signed you, once you fire him, you're going to be famous, because the Who, he did Maximum R&B and all that stuff. Yeah. He did the transition from high numbers. So by the time you got to the Who selling lots of records, they fired him because he was like a teenager. He couldn't do a tour of America. He couldn't do, anything like that. And then Jimi Hendrix fired him after the first, once he'd done Monterey, he saw the world as being bigger than what a 19-year-old agent could do.
Yeah, yeah.
So, my dad's thing was always, Barry signs you, you're going to be famous when you fire him.
Our last guest was at Monterey and found the Who so overwhelmingly noisy and violent. She hid under the stage because she thought something terrible was going to Ellen Sander.
Well, the great thing about the Who at the Marquee, because we used to go in the back. So I'd come from school, put my blazer in my duffel bag, meet Barry at the office in Wardour Street. Then we go into the back in the back door of the Who. Roger would be have a screwdriver in his microphone, and they were doing their own tech. And Pete used to break probably 3 Rickenbackers a show. They weren't earning any money.
Just the 3.
And so after sound check, we all went to the pub, and because I was 15, everyone was standing outside the pub. So it was the Ship and the Intrepid Fox, and because they didn't like each other, you'd actually be with Roger and John at one and Pete and Keith at the other. But we used to hang out with them before the gig, and I remember Kit Lambert saying, "Peter, could you not break quite so many guitars tonight? We're really losing money on this." And then Pete broke 3 guitars that night. Just had he not said anything, he probably would have broken 1. But I saw the Who right through their career, and those marquee days were just so superior.
I bet.
Because it became pantomime quite quickly, when he had faux amplifiers and things.
Yes.
When he smashed an amplifier and a guitar, they were real.
Yeah.
And on stage, so...
You were getting an extraordinary insight into the business from management, putting on gigs, all of those things. I mean, is that why you're so successful as a record man?
I teach...
As well as loving the music,
I teach A&R at Berklee College of Music. I'm a guest lecturer there. And I have been for 8 years. And before that, I taught at, University of the Arts and London Metropolitan. All I ever wanted to be was either a record producer or an A&R man. I loved records. I loved the whole recording process. Huge fan of the Beach Boys, that period, and what the Beatles were doing. So I loved production. And we went to see the Byrds, I think in 1965 or 66 at the Lyceum. And all my friends went, they were so terrible that night. They said, God, they're dreadful. I'd forget the Byrds. And I went, why? They said they were terrible. And I went, so what? They make brilliant records.
Yeah.
And at that point, looking back, that was the key point when it wasn't about the live acts. And also, I'd seen the best live acts I was ever going to see. It was really about the recording process. So that's what I wanted to be. But I happened to be good at business and money and negotiation. And also when I went into the record business, I thought to run a record company. I was looking at Chris Blackwell,
Right.
Simon Draper, Ahmet Ertegun. They all made records.
Yeah.
And so you thought, well, to be a successful head of a record company, which, is in the back of your head is maybe, if I make some great records, I can run a record company. I didn't realise, that you had to do all the other stuff. But as I did it, when I first started in publishing, in the first week I said to the head of business affairs, give me a few contracts. And I took them home and I read them and I came back and asked questions. So I understood contracts from age 21. So it was that thing of
the round, the whole.
But A&R talent falls on very different people in different ways. I mean, everybody thinks they know what a hit record is. Very few people have the chance of hearing it in its raw state, whether that's live or a demo. But everyone thinks they know a hit, but, as I always say, only some of us are right. I mean, a friend of mine from university days said, your job's easy. He said, when I hear a record on the radio, I know whether it's going to be a hit or not. I said, before it gets on the radio, there's an awful lot of filters that's already gone through.
Yes.
But it's that thing of being able to see something in very, very raw material.
And so how do you teach A&R then?
Well, I start with saying I can't teach you A&R. It's a gift. A&R is a gift that is bestowed on people. It's a bit like voices. Voices. Rod Stewart has a voice. A Scottish person born in Crouch End has a voice. Like Sam Cooke.
Yes.
Why? Paul Carrack has a voice. You have all these different things.
Yeah.
But whose it's bestowed on are all different people. Joe Cocker, you don't automatically look like you're going to get it. Van Morrison.
Yeah.
And A&R is the same as a gifted pianist or something like that. You just have that sixth sense of this is special.
Yes.
And so I tell them I can't teach that, but if you've got it, I can teach you how to use it. If you haven't got it, I can teach you to have a career. So that's how we do it. But we analyse songs, we analyse productions, and I tell stories because I've made so many records.
Yeah.
I've executive produced, which is kind of like A&Ring. Enya's hits and Cher's and Rod Stewart's and quite a few people, the Cause. So I've got involved in, so I can actually teach by example, saying this is how we did Believe by Cher, as opposed to the other teachers there kind of teaching theory.
Yeah.
So I teach the theory and then I give them a personal example and I say to them, have we got time for a story? And they all go, yes. So I just do stories. Let the other people do all the boring stuff.
Very good.
When did you first join Warner's? What year did you first join Warner's?
September the 20th, 71.
I love the September the 20th.
Well, it's a big day in your life. You're
So before that, you were in publishing. Were you in publishing?
That was publishing.
That was
Yes.
publishing.
Right.
Which I didn't know. I mean, when I finished university, when you're waiting for your grades, I thought, what do I want to do? And I thought, I either want to be a writer, I want to be in the music business, the film business, or the magazine business.
Right.
So I wrote letters to all the magazine, IPC and all these magazine places. I wrote letters to all the film companies, I wrote letters to all the record companies saying, I've done this and I was social sec and da-da-da. And I got no replies from the film companies at all. I got a reply from Polydor to be a salesman in Birmingham.
Right.
And I kind of thought, that's hardly going to be a career starter, is it? So I kind of turned that down. I got a refusal from Kinney, which was
The parent company.
the precursor of WEA.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got a refusal from that, which I've kept. I have that letter saying, I'm sorry, we don't have anything for you. And I got an interview at IPC for Honey, Petticoat and 19 as a writer.
Yeah.
So I went to work there for about 8 days, and my stories were. It's very hard because you had to write down.
Yeah.
For teenage girls on the tube. That's kind of for the audience for Honey and 19. So I wrote articles on keeping a big dog, Rastafarianism, and what was the other one? There was something. They were kind of nonsense things. The Rasta thing was of the time.
Yeah.
But I sketched those out, and I noticed that everyone was a woman. The editor was a woman, the assistant editor was, the features writers were all women. And I kind of thought, this is a woman's world. A man's not going to work. This is 71.
Yes.
A man's not going to be able to work in this area. And then I got this thing from Warner Brothers Music, the publishing company, saying, we've got a job opening. Would you like to come for an interview? So I, went home and I said to my dad, what's publishing? I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
So he explained it to me, and I went for the interview, and they just got the Bob Dylan catalogue. And then the boss who was interviewing me said, we've just got the Bob Dylan catalogue from, Leeds Music. And they've not sent us any titles, just first lines. And so I said, show me the first lines. And I said, well, that's this. and then he hired me. So,
fantastic.
Based around Bob Dylan subtitles.
Yes,
Brilliant.
I started. But in those days, Kinney Warner's was so small. We were all in the same office building.
Right.
And then on my first day at work, the promotion guys at the record company, one of them was ill and one of them was away on holiday. Mm-hmm. So they sent me straight down to the record company as a promotion man who'd never promoted anything, record-wise.
Yeah.
And so I was suddenly there, and my first day I was kind of really nervous because I got to work for the first time. And I said to my dad, I just hope I can do this. And he said, most people in the music business are stupid, so you're not, so you'll do well. And I just thought, that's a dad to a son on his first day at work.
Yeah.
So I go to work, they send me down, within an hour I'm in a promotion meeting. Mm-hmm. And there's probably 15 people in this meeting. There's artist relations, everyone's in this meeting. And they get to Riders on the Storm.
Right.
Just gone in the charts. So the head of promotion, just remain nameless, said, okay, the Doors in at number 20. We're going to fly them in. We're going to do Top of the Pops. We're going to do interviews and da-da-da. And I thought, no, Rob, you've been in the music business for an hour and a half. Shut up. And he carries on. And I just thought, this is so ridiculous. That shut up. And everyone looking at everyone's face, and they're all listening. And then I went, Des, sorry.
Cat's out of the bag,
yeah. The reason they got in the charts is Jim Morrison died.
Oh, for God's sake.
And he went, oh, shit, and hit his forehead. And I thought, Dad,
he's right.
I always thought if I ever wrote a book, first chapter would be called Dad, you're right.
That's fantastic.
And then in the first week, we went to pick up the Doors. They still brought them in.
Yeah.
And they said, you want to come? It's on a bus. We're going to take a bus to Heathrow. So he took a London bus to Heathrow to pick them up. Because these are the days you had to do stuff like that. And it broke down just around about Chiswick House. And there's a wonderful photograph of me and Derek Taylor sitting on a bus with the Doors looking fed up. That was my first week at work.
That's fantastic.
So when people go about, the Doors are Doors, I get this picture out and go, yeah, that's me and the Doors in 71.
Me and the Doors.
Like a dog without a bone, an actor out alone, riders on the storm.
When you started at Warner's, what did the label mean to you? What did Warner Reprise mean to you as a fan?
Well, a lot of the records I'd played, that I'd listened to, I'd asked for, were Warner Reprise. I mean, I remember going right back to Warner Brothers of Cathy's Clown by the Everly Brothers, and I remember the red label with the arrows on it. But all through, like Van Morrison, Joni Mitchell. So it was a label only from American acts. And I was heavily into American acts. So it was a label that I knew pretty well. And I was amazed when I took over the record label, is that they lost money from inception until I took over. And they'd had the Eagles' greatest hits and Fleetwood Mac Rumours, and still they managed to lose money.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. That is very hard.
They never, ever...
Gosh.
They never made money. And that was, the business thing. In 6 months, we'd turned a profit. Mm. And, when I left, we were, I think, per the size of our releases to our profits. They weren't the highest profits because companies were much bigger, but we were the best percentage profit to turnover. But that's just something. David Geffen said to me once, he said, I'm in the David Geffen business. The trouble with you is you're in the Warner business. And because I used to run it as if I owned it. So when I could, by the time I was chairman, I could have a suite in a hotel and travel first class. I still travel first class. But I had a room because I just slept in it. I didn't do business or anything else. And I remember one of my staff who was travelling with me who had a suite. And I said, why do you need a suite? He said, well, because I can. And I just went, oh, I can't do that. And I did actually run it as if I paid attention to lots of things. Waiting times on cabs.
Yeah.
I suddenly went, no, we're not paying waiting time on cabs.
Yeah. Keeping on the bottom line, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was because... it hurt if we lost any money over anything.
Yeah. Sure. And that was a very incredibly indulgent time of the music business as well.
Waiting time on cabs sounds kind of mean, but basically people in press and A&R and marketing were ordering a cab for like 12:30 and getting in it at 1:30.
Right.
To go to a lunch, which then was an expense.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of thing, you can have the cab, but you can't have an hour.
Well, 9 times out of 10, they could really just walk around the corner to have lunch.
How dare you?
And I can speak for Mark and Martin when I say that those labels, Warner and Reprise, were really important to us.
Yes.
So many of the artists that we worshipped. So, we're doing a kind of Warner Reprise special to coincide with you being on the podcast. Okay. And, when you think about Van Morrison, Joe, you think about Little Feat.
Well, for me, it's Live Dead.
Live Dead, well, of course, for you, Grateful Dead.
I bought that when it came, just after it came out.
Yeah.
And that was probably the first record I owned which had the Warner Brothers logo on the label. I just loved that record.
Yes.
And it was mysterious, it was American, it was so far away and kind of strange.
It's so bloody awful.
Hang on, it's the second time. Gary Kent gives me a hard time.
That's very funny.
That's your lot, mate. As a deadhead, I'm sorry.
With the exception of maybe Uncle John's band. And
we don't have time for a debate about Grateful Dead.
Relative merits.
I'll tell you a quick story, though, is that there was this really attractive girl, and I asked her out, and I had Grateful Dead tickets because I was at Warner's, and she was a huge Grateful Dead, so we had these great tickets, and I was Earl's Court, and I was really keen. I was really keen on this girl. And we got there, and 2.5 hours into the gig, I said, I can't...
I can't stand this anymore.
I can't take any more of this. It's so dreary. And she said, it's brilliant. So I said, well, I'm going to go. And she said, well, I'm going to stay. And that was it. Wow. That
Mark, have any of your relationships collapsed?
I never pushed them that far.
They played for 5 hours that night, and I just thought, God, 2 hours of my life I got back.
Martin, when you think about Warner Reprise, are there other specific albums or moments or gigs?
Yes, there were. Well, certainly after the Gold Rush, that entire kind of era of music, partly because it felt, I don't know, I think American music at that point was incredibly seductive.
Yeah.
I'd grown up with jazz musicians and skiffle and all of those things, and the Warners seemed to have some connection to black music, and they had a connection to a kind of intelligent end of certainly 69 to 74, or kind of Little Feat, that whole thing. It was one of those times where if it was Warner's, you could trust it. You could buy it and not be worried. I mean, you didn't like everything, but there was enough. That was always a good guide.
Yes.
I had that with Elektra Records.
Yeah.
I bought Elektra Records because I had Paul Seaboard, The Doors, Rhinoceros. And I remember the first time I met Jack Holtzman, I said I used to buy Elektra Records just because it was on Elektra, until one record. And then I went, that's it. It's over. I'm never going to buy Elektra Record without hearing it. And as Jack said, well, what was that? I said, the Whackers. You know the Whackers?
No, we've got a couple of pieces on the Whack.
Have we?
Yeah, I mean, can you describe what they sounded like? Were they like a power? Were they sort of power pop?
No, they were meant to be, hence the name. They were meant to be Beatlesque.
Beatlesque.
But they were actually monkey-esque. Without the songs. So, if you imagine a terrible songwriter writing songs for the Monkeys, you've kind of got the Whackers. And I was so personally offended that I'd paid this money. I bought it from Imhoff's in Tottenham Court Road. Yeah.
Which was the first act you personally signed as an A&R man?
My first signing in publishing was Johnny Bristol.
Oh, right, yeah.
Hang on in there, baby.
Hang on in there, baby. Yeah, Hang on in there, baby. Went to number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Warner Brothers Music was the number 11 publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And within 2 years, we were number 1.
Wow.
But that was the first one I signed. But the great thing about Johnny Bristol is he had a lawyer called Lee Phillips. And Lee Phillips was Joni Mitchell, Neil Young. And when I took over the publishing company, it was a week before my 24th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 24, and all the American lawyers took away all their acts because they went, as a kid running a company, we're going to go to a proper publishing company, except for Lee Phillips. So he kept Joni and Neil with me. And he said, I've got this new artist, Johnny Bristol. So signed Johnny Bristol. And that was a hit. And I was in America, and he said, I've got this new kid, and we're going to sign to Warner Brothers Records. Do you want to hear some demos? Mm. And it was Prince. So when he was 17, he played me Prince demos.
Fantastic.
That became his first album.
Yeah.
And I went, I love this.
Yeah.
So I signed Prince, on the spot, as Warner's was still negotiating. So we had Prince at the same time.
Yes.
As the record company.
Wow. Then
I watched the record company fail to break him.
Right.
Which is when we do it, when I took over, and it was Purple Rain, and we broke When Doves Cry, and the follow-up was Let's Go Crazy, and I went, no, not in England.
Mm-hmm.
1999.
Yes.
Backed with Little Red Corvette, and they went, what are you talking about? I said, I want to prove a point. They will always hit records.
Yeah.
And I've got to know that I can make them hit records.
Right.
And so that was a double A side. I think it went to number 2.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that, but only existed in the UK. Is it because I did the same thing with Madonna. We put out Get Into the Groove, which is the only place it came out as an A side was in the UK.
Yeah.
Because I think it was Angel was the record they told us to put
So
out.
it's actually a hit. She was a hit here before she was a hit in America. Is that right?
Well, they sent her. They said, England's got no music, just image, and we've got an artist that is just image, and she's a disco singer, and so we're going to send her to England because we don't know what to do with her. And I remember a very high-ranking executive at Warner Brothers America said, "I just wish we had Cyndi Lauper." And he said, but you see what you can do with Madonna. So she kind of lived in the press office in the UK.
Yeah.
I have a good Madonna story at the beginning. We took her out for dinner, and she'd had a single just before I got there called Everybody, which stiffed. Mm-hmm. And she was signed on a 12-inch deal by Seymour Stein for Sire. And then they changed that into an album deal a bit later on. And so we took her out to dinner, and a couple of things happened. That day, she had a press thing from The Face, The Daily Express, all this stuff she had to do. And she didn't show up for it. Mm-hmm. And apparently, what verb can I use? She was partying with Rankin Roger of the Beat, who she'd met the night before,
Right.
until, right the way through the press day. And then we took her to dinner that night, and I said, look, Madonna, you've got to... And it was weird saying the word Madonna back then.
Yes.
When you're talking to someone, instead of like, hey, Barney, it was like, hey, Madonna. It was strange saying those words.
Yeah.
But I said to that's really... We're going out on a limb here. These people... And she said, you know what? Every unknown does an interview with these people. And I didn't. And now remember, I didn't when I'm the biggest actor in the world. And I'm looking at this girl that had one record out that's stiff. And she's saying, when I'm the biggest actor, and I'm sort of rolling my eyes thinking, oh my God, look at this. And I look back at it when she was the biggest actor in the world. And I think, did she know? I mean, I felt that she knew. It was very weird that she always knew.
What year was this? 81?
83.
83, yeah.
Right. I remember being in a demo studio around 82, 83, and this guy, one of John Rocker from Freeze, he was in the studio. He said, have you heard of this woman called Madonna? She can do everything. She can dance, she can sing, she can do the lot. And I've never heard of her. That's the very first time I heard her name mentioned. And it was really interesting. This guy was, just saying...
I actually interviewed her at Warner's when... It may have been the second time she came over. And I did find her self-belief terrifying. Actually.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, I have a theory about... Every artist changes from, before success. They can be the nicest person in the world, but success will change them.
Yeah.
One way or another, usually not for the best, but they become different people. And I've seen it so many times. And I always say, there's one person that didn't change, was Madonna.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, really? Oh, I said, she was always a nightmare. So when she was the biggest actor in the world, she was still a nightmare.
Yes.
So she's the only one that had a level... everyone else has a graph getting more and more difficult. She was difficult from the get-go.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
You were in the music business for a long time. You saw all the various changes. I mean, how did you feel? I mean, so going through the end of the 70s, the 80s and the 90s, how did you sort of feel the music business changed? And did it change for the better or for the worse? Or
that's a bit metaphysical, really.
Sorry. I do apologise.
It changed.
Yes.
It also depends on what point of view. At the moment, the record industry makes more money than it's ever made in its life.
Extraordinarily, after a period when it was really...
when everyone thought it was over.
Yeah.
And those people that, like Len Blavatnik, who made decisions to get involved in it, have payday. So the record industry, went from making a little bit of money to making a lot of money to making even more with CDs.
Right.
And then completely missed the boat with
downloads.
No, downloads.
Yeah. We got this marvellous interview with Sky Solomon, who ran Tower Records from 1994.
Russ Solomon.
Yeah, Russ Solomon. And he's saying, downloads will never catch on. No one will want to listen to music on their computers. And it's just marvellous reading this now. It's just, and then Tower went bust in 2004, so it was...
I was on the, chairman of the BPI, so I was on the IFPI.
Right.
And I remember there was like a Sean Fanning meeting about, the devil, this guy. And they were going to sue him here and sue him there. And I went, I think you're all mad. I think we should be hiring him. He saw a business we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. But they didn't believe in CDs.
No.
It's like...
It's a resistance.
They really believed in cassettes, which is probably the worst thing that ever happened to the music business. And they all believed in cassettes because they were cheap.
Until people started taping their stuff on cassettes, and then it became home taping is killing music.
Yeah.
I was chairman of the BPI during that thing, but it was so financially it's had its up. It got more and more profitable, and then
Yeah.
it had a dip, and then it came back more profitable than ever for the big labels. Because basically they're turning over 1 billion songs. One label, Universal, I think has 1 billion songs, are selling every single day. Now, minuscule
Yes.
amounts of money,
yeah, but
selling every hour of every day in every country. It
extraordinary.
wasn't, let's wait for the record store to open.
Yeah.
And it's like, so every minute there's someone downloading, streaming something. So the profits with no A&R, no marketing.
Just
no upfront,
monsters.
very few.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
And a load of your catalogue with no upfront costs to it.
So you can look at it that way, and then you look at it the artist way,
Yeah.
and you see, and when I was buying records or obtaining records, it was, there was one TV in the house and a dance set record player in your bedroom, and you either watched TV that your parents decided on, or you went to your room and played a record, or you went to your friend's house and played records. There was no other. So music became everything.
Yeah.
And then bit by bit, it's become a strand
Yes.
of, a completely multidimensional empire of what you can do with your time.
Yeah.
And, also music's how you judge people. I
Yes.
used to go to girls' flats and things when I was dating. And I'd go straight to the
Record
collection and go,
Not dating her anymore.
Too many Grateful Dead records.
Too many Grateful Dead records.
Julia, what was her name? There was an artist on Virgin called
Julia, I know who you mean. Yes.
And
Julia
like-
Fordham.
Julia Fordham. And if I saw a Julia Fordham
You were
record,
out of there.
I was out of there.
Poor Julia Fordham.
If I saw an Otis Redding record, if I saw Otis Blue there, I think this is a keeper.
Proposed on the spot.
This is a keeper, yeah.
You mentioned Rod Stewart earlier, Rob, and I just wanted to ask you about the story of Downtown Train.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's when I took over Warner's, the day I took over, the second day of my reign at Warner's as the chair, Baby Jane went to number one. Had nothing to do with me, but it was kind of like a sign. They hadn't had a number one in years, and then suddenly there's this number one. And so Rod Stewart was back on it, selling lots of records, and then we had year 2, year 3, year 4, and he just made all those, forgettable AOR records that sold in America, in Europe, not just the UK. The people didn't really buy his records anymore. I had a meeting with him and his manager saying, what's going on in the UK? Why isn't Rod... So, I'm slightly Asperger's when it comes to... I can lie about anything, but I can't lie about music. So if someone's asked me a musical question... whether it's, what do you think of the record or whatever? And I said, well, basically, Rod is a good singer of mediocre songs.
Yes.
And a great singer of great songs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the last couple of albums have been mediocre songs. And first of all, the manager couldn't believe I just said that. and he, with Rod in the room. And then Rod said, so you can find me a great song? And I said, in a second. And he said, okay, my house in Epping, Saturday lunchtime, you come over. Epping from London is a slot. So I just had an argument with everything that was going on because I love Tom Waits. I've got some Tom Waits stories as well. I love Tom Waits.
We all love Tom Waits.
And they used to do Downtown Train in the act.
Right.
And they demoed it, and I said, oh, this is a single. And they went, you don't tell us what singles we can do. I said, no, but, it's not like I came up with the idea. You came up with the idea. And they said, well, we're not doing it. So when I was trying to think of a great song, I thought, Downtown Train, that's a great song. It was right in my front of my brain. And also, I knew Rod a little bit. I sort of met him a few times at the Faces and stuff. And I knew he had the concentration of a rock star. Let's put it that way. So I made a cassette and I put Downtown Train on it 3 times. And I went over to the house, and then his son came down with a boombox, and I slotted in the cassette, and I played Downtown Train, and I said, don't say anything. And I played it, and then it came on again. And then I said, don't say anything. and And the third time it played, he went, I love it. I absolutely love it. And his son, who was a teenager at the time, said, Dad, why does he sing so bad? And I went, that's my point. You know, most people can't stand Tom Waits' singing voice. I
Sure.
mean, I love it.
Yeah.
But I got why he's not, you know, a huge seller. And I said, so that song with you singing it suddenly. So he says, okay, I'll do it. So I rein in Trevor Horn, and Trevor goes and does a sort of a backing track with Rod doing it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is good. This could be something. And then I'm somewhere out of London. I get a phone call from Lenny Waronker, who I've never seen him say a harsh word to anyone. He is, you know, that avuncular, easygoing. He calls me up. He's so angry. And he goes, I hear you're making a record with Rod Stewart. And I said, well, yeah. I said, he said, what do you mean, well, yeah? He said, it's not your artist. You are the distribution of Warner Brothers Records. And how dare you take an A&R decision on one of our artists without talking to us?
Wow.
So I kind of thought, well, you're right, because I'd be the same.
Yeah.
So I said, and he said, so what are you going to do? I said, if you don't want it and it's finished, we'll take the cost. We'll eat the cost.
Sure.
So he kind of reluctantly agreed. And I put the phone down, the phone rings, and it's Trevor Horn. He said, I've been thinking about this track. It needs an orchestra.
Just after you said you absorb the cost.
Yeah, it needs an orchestra. And I thought, oh, God. And I said, do you mean strings? He said, no, it needs an orchestra. So I just went in for a penny, in for a pound. So I said, okay. So he puts an orchestra on it. And they still haven't done final vocals. Rod's gone back to LA. Trevor flies out to do the vocal. He rings me up and he said, when Rod's warmed up his voice, the whole track is in the wrong key. So he's now a semitone different from this. So I'm thinking, oh, God, this is, you know, this is the terrible situation. So then I said, what can you do? And he said, no, I'm talking to all kind of technicians here. So he called back and he said, like, we can move it up a semitone without ruining the strings. So they did.
Yeah.
And then Rod did it in his proper key, and everybody loved it, and it kind of put Rod back. He was on the cover of Rolling Stone after it, which he hadn't been on for years.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Suddenly he was cool.
Yeah.
And that
The
leads,
Tom Waits effect.
and that leads me to a Tom Waits story, but I'm not sure we got time.
Will I see you tonight on a downtown train? Every night is just the same on a downtown train.
I do have to ask you about the whole debacle around Robert Morgado and Doug Morris. Tell us the story of how you came within a whisker of becoming the head of...
I was the head of
You were for 24 hours.
For 24 hours.
The global head of Warner Brothers.
I was, yeah. And the job, it was a job I always wanted. I mean, I love Warner Brothers. I love what they meant, which was an artist haven, and very A&R led. Whereas, you know, CBS Sony was business affairs led, you know, quite cold decisions. It was much warmer at Warner Brothers. And then Mo Austin was this, you know, this great figure that ran it. And he and Bob Morgado, who was overseeing the music division, fell out. I think Warner's weren't doing it quite as well as he wanted. Mo, I think, was too powerful. And so they fell out, and Mo was gone, and they had to replace him. And they offered me the job, and which I said yes to, and flew out to LA and met a few people. David Geffen had a house in the Bird Streets in West Hollywood, and he said, you know, if you need a house, there's a house here straight away, so you can, you know, get started. So it was all kind of looking good. And then Bob Morgado said, I've just got to, you know, sort out a few bits of local politics. So I said, fine, let me know when you need me. And he said, because I want you to do a series of press conferences in New York. So I said, fine, whenever you need me. And I was at the ASCAP Awards, I think, in London. And I got back at 1 o'clock. I got a phone call from Bob Magado, said, we need you here tomorrow morning. No, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And he said, because we're going to announce it. So we're doing the press thing, we're going to announce it. So I didn't really go to bed. I had to find a hotel room, which Rod Stewart's managers, because I couldn't get a hotel room in New York. And he said, I've got a suite at the Carlisle, I'm not going to use, you have that. So I had a hotel, then I had to get the Concorde. So I got the first Concorde out, and I'm flying out, and I said, oh my goodness, to my now wife. And I said, what is going on? She said, it's your destiny. And so I got on this plane thinking, it's the one job I've always wanted, to run Warner Brothers Records properly from America. So I get to the hotel and I get a phone call from Magado's assistant saying, Bob's got to deal with a few things. Can you just wait in the hotel room? So I'm waiting in the hotel room and then I don't hear. So we're going from like 9 o'clock New York time, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. David Geffen rings me and said, what's going on? I said, I'm waiting in this room. I don't know what's going on. He said, I hear you're out. I'm preparing for a press conference, so this is going to really, trust Geffen to know before anyone else. He's not even, I think even there it's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. Yeah. Anyway, he just started DreamWorks. And he said, look, whatever happens, there's a job for you at DreamWorks. And he said, they hadn't opened yet.
Right.
And he said, so don't get upset. You've got a job here. And they were all over the news when it was launched. So I kind of thought, well, that's nice, but I don't know what's going on. So after about 1 o'clock, I called Magado's office and he said, I'm in a bit of a difficult situation. Doug Morris says it's him or you. And Doug Morris at that time was going to be head of the music division. And he said, Doug says it's him or you. And we can't, and I said, well, you can't give in to that. You immediately, weakened your whole position. And he said, I know I've got an interest in this, but as an advisor to you, when someone says it's him or, it's him or me, against your decision, you can't let them win. And he said, well, I've got to, and, I'm really sorry.
Wow.
And so I'm just left at the Carlisle with a job that I thought I'd had. And, they'd made arrangements to what happened in the UK.
Yeah.
All this had gone on in 24 hours.
It's an astonishing story.
And, and I've got to say, I think I'd have had a nervous breakdown, other than the fact that David Geffen said, because that was the coolest label that was going to be, after Asylum and everything else and Geffen Records. I think if I'd been left that, and then I came back, and they said, Rob, of course you've got your old job. And so I rang David and thanked him and said, look. And he said, well, why wouldn't you leave? And I said, my staff and my artists. By that time I had Enya and, lots of different, Simply Red. We had lots of things that we were doing well with. And I said, I can't leave them.
No.
And that kind of made my relationship with David not quite as good as it used to be. But that's that situation.
I remember that great big Vanity Fair story about this whole drama. And,
I had a gay friend, because I remember I had Brad Pitt on the cover, and then there was the Brad Pitt sort of photo splash where he was kind of in nothing but a pair of shorts. And a gay friend then said to, I've got the Vanity Fair. And I kind of rang him a couple of days later and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, I can't get past the Brad Pitt picture.
He hadn't even read the story. No. You were quoting. That's fantastic.
Oh, dear.
That is absolutely brilliant. We're going to have you back for a kind of part 2. Because we don't have that much more time. We need to
press on through a few other things.
Move on to the audio interview. And
in fact, it's quite a good way of ending this part, is on the disaster of your 24-hour appointment as
Yes.
Yeah, when people said, "You never were head of Warner Bros." I said, "Yes, I was." 24 hours.
Well, your Warner's career did officially end in 1998, of course, which was three or so years later.
Yeah.
There's obviously more to talk about after
It
that.
ended with the biggest record of my career.
Yeah, we'll leave that bit out. Tell us about it.
Cher, Believe.
Cher's Believe. Yeah.
Well, the extraordinary story of
we have
the creation
auto-tune.
of Believe is
Yes.
unbelievable.
Yes.
It's kind of-
Yeah, there's quite a few things we're missing out.
I know. I'm sorry about that. Tell us about Cher. Tell us about that record, because it was a huge record.
It was, well, Cher's manager I'd known, he was a friend of my brother's, and he was just the most wonderful person. And so he rings me and said, "I can't get arrested. We've been dropped by Geffen. I can't get arrested in the States. And if anyone can make a hit record with it, it's you. And, flattery will get you everywhere." So so we talked a deal, and I signed Cher to the UK company. And I thought, I can make hits with Cher, which I did. I got Trevor Horn in because we just done the Rod Stewart stuff, and so I got Trevor Horn to do the record. And we made a fantastic record. And I don't know if you know, but on that record is a Prefab Sprout song,
Oh, I didn't
Which-
know that. Which one?
The Gunman.
Okay.
And I absolutely, it was a demo at the time from Paddy. I love Paddy McAloon as a creative talent, as a human being. He's one of the best people I've ever met. And I just kind of thought it would be great to share cut a Paddy McAloon song. And so it's the song she hates more than anything, I think. It's the track she hates more. But it's wonderful. And we did this, and, I Walking in Memphis was a great song and hadn't been a hit.
Yeah.
So I kind of heard her singing that. And then I had another track called One by One. So we made this record, which is called It's a Man's World, because we did James Brown, because I always thought how great to have that lyric sung by a woman, by a strong woman.
Yeah.
So that was that album. And we had 2 top 10 singles. The album did well, but nothing really to write home about. And then I had a meeting with Cher and Billy Samuth, the manager, who we call Bumper. And I said to her, all my gay male friends, of which I have a lot, love you. They've never mentioned your music once, but they love you. Why don't we make a record for them?
Right.
So, because... And she said, "What do you mean? A dance record?" I said, "Yeah, a high-energy record. And, just something that they can go, I love her and I love that record." And she said, "I'm not making a dance record. I tried that in the disco time and it was a disaster.
Right.
I'm not making a dance record." So I kind of knew I was right. And so I kept on and kept on. And then she, we had phone calls and stuff. And she said, "If you're going to carry on like this, I'm not talking to you." And she didn't talk to me for 3 months. And then she said, I said, "Can we meet?" And she was in LA, I was in London, so we decided to meet in New York. So I get to New York, and in the hotel, I've got a message from the desk going, from Cher, "I'm not coming, I'm not making a dance record." So I'm thinking, great. And so I went and met with Junior Vasquez and Tom Terry. And I went to Tower Records and I bought Cher records. And I said, work out her key.
Yes.
And then write me some hits. And so Tom Terry did a great track.
Right.
Junior Vasquez did something. And then she heard I was making the record. And at the same time, I bet you're glad you asked for this story. Aren't you? At the same time, I used to love hanging out in the A&R department. My office was on its own floor. But every time I wanted to hang out, the phone would ring, or my fabulous assistant would say, "You've still got to do this, this, and this." I never got past her desk. And so this day, I walked past her desk and went downstairs to the A&R department. And Steve Allen, my friend down there, had his door open, and there was a songwriter called Brian Higgins sitting there like this, sort of coyly in the corner. Steve was on the phone. And I'd always had a rule: you never take a phone call unless it's from an artist. Mm-hmm. And he was on the phone call just like, and I just thought, no, this is terrible. So I said, Brian, how are you? And Brian had written for like Danny Minogue or something. Mm-hmm. And I just felt sorry for him. So I'm making a record with Cher. You know, have you got anything? So he said, I've got loads. And I went, I don't want loads. Give me 2. So he turns up the next day with a DAT, which, you know, you can't play in your car. I had a DAT machine in my office. And is there a voice comes in and say, that is a digital audio tape, which was... yeah, and
That's the future of recording it.
so I had a machine in my house, and on it was 16 tracks. And I thought, oh, please. Mm-hmm. You know, I asked for 2, I get 16, typical. So I completely forget about it. I take it home, and then one day I come home, and my wife is out, and it was a really hot summer's day. So I went up and laid on the bed, and I thought, well, I can listen to something. Now, the thing about DAT is you can't fast forward, and you can't pick tracks like a CD. So I put the DAT on, and the first track happened, the second track, they were terrible. And they were a minute long. And I thought, this is so weird, a minute long, but it made it easy. So get to track 9, it's a track called Believe. And it's the chorus of Believe, which we all know. Mm-hmm. I thought, God, I love this. And then track 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, rubbish. And so I go back and I ring him up and I said, I really like this song, Believe, but it's just a chorus. And he said, well, I kind of figure if you don't like the chorus, what's the point of finishing the song? And I went, and this is a person who's sort of grown up with Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell, and I'm thinking, please, you know, where is it? What am I doing? So I said, well, finish the song. He said, yeah, I'll finish the song. And he finished the song. It was terrible. And I went, Brian, you've written this hit chorus and then this terrible verse and middle 8 and he said, well, you know, I'll give it another go. I said, no, you had your chance. You know, I'm not that person anymore. You've had your chance. So I was working with a guy, a writer, producer, manager called Brian Rawling, and we were doing a song that he'd written for the Cher thing, or sent me for Cher. And I said, oh, have you got, you know, can you finish this off? You know, your writers finish this off. So then they came back with a terrible verse, terrible middle 8, and a great bridge to the chorus, which is the famous auto-tune part.
But after all is said and done, you're gonna be the lonely one. Oh, do you believe in life?
You've got 2 pieces.
I've got 2 pieces. I've still got no verse, and I've got no middle 8.
And no buy-in from the artist at this point.
Yeah, the artist doesn't
The
want to do
artist
it.
is not really talking to me.
It's really going well.
She's not making her. But, you know, I know I've got, like, the bones of a hit. So I say to Brian, you know, what is right? I'm giving you a hit chorus. Why can't you write a verse? And I said, no, you've had your chance. He said, well, I've got other writers. I said, okay, that's it. You can get some other writers on it. And then they wrote the verse. And I said, great, I really love the verse. The middle 8 still sucks. And he said, oh, Rob, please give us a break. I mean, it's a great song. And I said, there it is. You know, it's just... And so I said, okay.
No matter how hard I try, you keep pushing me aside, and I can't break through. There's no talking to you.
And I sent it to Cher. I said, you know, you didn't think there were any songs in dance music. Well, listen to this. And I've got to say, why I love Cher, and I do love Cher, is a lot of people, to make a point, someone who's like an icon like Cher would have said, I hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if they didn't.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't. She came back and said, I absolutely love it. She said, what do you want me to do? And I said, sing the fucking vocal. And so she flew over and she did it. And in the morning she got up to do the vocal. Oh no, after she'd done the vocal. And Roachford was on This Morning, or morning TV. And he had a vocoder on his voice. And she went, I love this. So he went to the studio and she went, I want it to sound like Roachford. And they said, well, that's a vocoder. And we don't have one. He said, but I can give you an approximation. and he turns up the auto-tune to sort of 10
Yes.
to show what an auto-tune can do.
Yeah.
And she went, I love it. And he went, no, I'm only just showing you what he said, no, I love it. So I get a phone call saying that she's got this thing on her voice. And so I came down and I said, Cher, your signature is your voice. Can we just dial it back again? And she said, anyone touches that over my dead body. And so someone was writing a book about number one records. And they said, so I'm writing this thing about how you put the auto-tune on. And I said, I got to say, I created the song like Frankenstein, but I did not do the auto-tune. That was completely Cher. So it was I rang Cher when it was number one. And, I was the little boy watching Ready, Steady, Go.
Yeah,
The 15-year-old
absolutely.
watching Ready, Steady, Go and thinking, I Got You, Babe was the best record I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I'm this little boy waiting for him to pick up the phone. She's thrilled. Then I called Brian to tell him we're number one. And he went, that's fantastic. And he screamed, whooping. And I said, and the middle eight still sucks.
That's a great.
That's
It's a
fantastic.
fantastic
That's
story.
fantastic.
It's a
Wonderful,
Shaggy
wonderful
Dog
story.
story. of a-
It all the things that could have run. The phone could have rung, which it always did. Or my assistant said, you've still got reply to so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have gone downstairs.
Yeah.
If Steve hadn't picked up the phone, he'd been a door-closed meeting. I wouldn't have seen Brian Higgins.
Yeah.
If my wife hadn't gone out that evening, I wouldn't have listened to that.
Yeah.
And the whole trajectory of popular music would be different.
I saw Cher the other day, and she said Kanye West came up to me and he said, how does it feel creating a whole,
Yeah.
genre of music? Because hip-hop embraced auto-tune.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. To a ridiculous degree.
To a good and to a very bad extent.
Oh, no, a very bad extent.
Yes.
But I
And
know-
also, so did like pop singers.
Yeah.
In the true sense
Yes.
of just being able to put it in tune.
Yeah.
But men's every vocal sound the same.
I love the fact that she was alert enough to what was happening with the sound of her voice with this machinery to kind of instantly say, this is really
this could
interesting.
work.
I mean, that's an artist. That's a creative decision of hers.
She's the greatest. I mean, she's funny.
I'm so glad you say that, because I've always adored her from a long way away. And
Are you gay?
no. Should I be?
Yeah,
We are
basically. on the share
We're
scale.
on now by
You
definition.
officially are now.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
exactly.
I can take that.
I get my friends now, my gay friends. If I go somewhere and there's lots of gay people, they go, this is Rob. He made believe. And it's like, I'm suddenly like this
great.
superpower.
I remember
great.
reading Robbie Fulks, who's an alt-country singer, was travelling endlessly in a van with his band. And that came on, and everyone was going, oh, turn that off. And he said, no, this is a great, great song. And they all said, really? So he put it in the set that night, and then they kept doing it. And everyone came to realise that it
country
was
song.
a kind of country-esque.
Except for the middle eight.
Except I dropped that.
If you listen to that record again, you'll see what I mean.
Well, actually, when we finish this, we must have a listen to
Yeah,
the
totally.
It basically just repeats a line, and it's
Yeah.
dreadful.
I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore.
But it's surrounded by brilliance, so
That's
we
all
get
right.
away with it.
So how many writers were credited in the end?
6.
6.
Wow.
2 plus 2 plus 2.
Yeah. All on
at the
different
end,
percentages?
It won the... no, it was an argument about percentages. But I said Brian Higgins has got to get 50%.
Right.
Because of the
Because
chorus. And
the chorus, and he started the whole genesis.
Yeah.
So it was that thing.
Yeah.
There was a bit of argument from the others, but in the end, they all made millions.
yes, yes.
Except me.
You,
We won't ask
in
very
Dick
much.
Clark or Alan Freed sense, your name should be on the track.
Yeah, should really.
Well, Pete Waterman. Because people, Stock and Aiken wrote the song.
Yeah, and he always put his name on it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it, because he
made
directed
the-
them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened without him.
He orchestrated
Yeah.
their work, and that's kind of what I did. But I wasn't a producer; I was the head of a record company, and it was not. I certainly not what I wanted to do.
No.
But I kind of felt when they won the song, they all went up, and I got asked up as well. But when I was going, this is so and so. Meet Brian Higgins, and so it's like they never met.
That's so
And I think it's the only song I've Frankenstein in my career.
It's great.
That's fantastic.
Do you believe in
thanks for talking to us about your amazing career, Rob. It's really been fascinating. And I know we could talk for another 2-3 hours, but we do have to move on.
We've got to move on.
The week's new audio interview. What is it, Mark?
Yeah, it's Leon Russell being interviewed by Andy Gill in 1998. It's terrific. It's about an hour long, but he goes right back to backing Jerry Lee Lewis in Oklahoma, moving to Los Angeles, becoming one of what he in fact says they were never called at the time, and he rightly so, the Wrecking Crew, the piano player with the Wrecking Crew, playing lots of Phil Spector sessions, playing on Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man, which of course the Byrds themselves didn't play on, except for Roger McGuinn, I think.
Which ties in with what you were saying earlier, Rob, about the Byrds on
Live,
stage versus...
Yes. I've been for a while in the Shindig house band, Jack Good, who I will talk about a little bit later as well. Delaney and Bonnie, Denny Cordell coming out, meeting Joe Cocker, starting the idea of Shelter Records. Let's listen to the first clip, which is about putting together Mad Dogs and Englishmen for Joe Cocker.
Well, it worked out that Joe had fired the Grease Band. He had 50 shows booked in the United States, and he was going to cancel them. But he had fired his band for some reason, and the Musicians Union told him that if he didn't play those shows, they weren't going to let him work in the United States again. So he was kind of up against the wall a very short amount of time, 4 or 5 days before the first show. So he asked me, actually Denny asked me, could I put something together so he could make those dates. So I just trying to think of something that could be done rapidly. I just sat there and started dictating what it should be, what the band should be. We should get a film crew, get news crews, and get a plane. And so somebody was writing it all down. A couple of days later, all that stuff was there. And so it was interesting and worked well.
Yeah, it's good.
Once while traveling across the sky, this lovely planet called mine.
So you've got to put a band together in 5 days, and you just complicate it enormously by adding a film crew.
I don't. It is extraordinary. Have you seen the film?
Yeah. So recently.
I love that album. I mean, it's just absolutely one of my favourites. And but it's very, you can see Joe Cocker's in a really unhappy situation, and him descending into what became basically 5 years of alcoholic gloom, and sort of dragged himself out of it. Then he talks more about Shelter Records, about his old Tulsa buddy J.J. Cale, what he calls the troubled soul of Willis Allen Ramsey. Recording Freddie King the second time I saw Leon Russell. Freddie King was the support band at Rainbow, I guess 72, 73. Then his first 2 solo albums, the first one with a very starry cast, recorded at Olympic here. Glyn Johns, brought in George Harrison, Ringo Starr.
Basically the Beatles and the Stones.
The Beatles and the Stones, basically. And he talks also about writing songs and about A Song for You and The Masquerade becoming standards. This is his next clip. This is about A Song for You and Ray Charles.
At a certain period of time, I attempted to write standards. I was fascinated. There was a guy that played with Tower of Power, played the baritone sax, Doc. He said to me, I don't know how you do it. He said, I've had 12 number 1 records, and nobody ever cuts my songs. He said, you have all these records out, and hundreds of people cut your songs. How do you do that? So, I never really thought of it to that extent, but in the case of Song for You, I was trying to write a song that Ray Charles and Frank Sinatra both could sing, a blues song that had qualities that that a standard lounge singer could sing. And in fact, my publishing guy took that to Ray Charles before my record came out, and his response was that he didn't like to do songs by people that sounded like him because he didn't want to be accused of stealing. So I was really pleased that he cut it. It was about 23 years later he cut it on that album and had a hit with it.
I've been so many places in my life and time. I've sung a lot of songs, I've made some bad rhymes.
That reminds me of Randy Newman's Lonely at the Top,
Yeah.
which he wrote for Frank Sinatra.
Yes, yes,
And it's still goes. Frank Sinatra really had a sense of humour.
yes, yeah.
That would have been one hell of a record.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
It really would.
So-
Should mention that the reason we've added this is because there's a new biography of Leon, probably the first biography of
Right.
Leon Russell, coming out next week by Bill Yanovitz, who was the lead singer of Buffalo Tom, and it's called The Master of Space and Time's Journey Through Rock and Roll History. And you've read some of it, haven't you?
I've got about a third of the way through. Really interesting,
Yeah?
actually. Yeah, he's,
I mean, it's a fascinating
very-
story.
very-
to
isn't
be
it?
a teenager and playing in Jerry Lee
Yeah.
Lewis's band, for one thing.
At
And then-
14.
But then also how he was a huge stage act in America in the early 70s, playing big audiences, and then his career just cratered more or less overnight. Then he did some interesting stuff. He talks about it, doing that really wonderful album with Willie Nelson,
Yeah.
where he's playing on a Yamaha CP70 electric Grand, which is the most distinctive piano noise on earth. Everyone hates it, and he makes it sound, and it works beautifully. And he also talks about the concert for Bangladesh that he was very involved in putting
Yeah,
together,
absolutely.
you know, with the children.
Did Leon mean anything to you, Rob?
I loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just loved those. I mean, Tightrope. Or I mean, just
Yeah.
song after song.
Yeah, yeah.
Me and Baby Jane.
Delta Lady, I mean, which was a hit for Joe Cocker.
Yeah, I prefer the ballads.
You did, well, fair enough.
Manhattan Island Serenade is sensational, I think.
Interesting singing voice.
Billy
I mean,
Joel
actually
song,
closer to
isn't it?
Dr. John than anyone else.
I
in
love
terms of-
Dr. John.
Well, so as do we.
I think
we
he
all
was
do.
clearly
love Dr.
influenced
John.
by Dr. John.
I guess he probably didn't have naturally a good singing voice. So he had
Compared
to
to
make
Mac
something.
Rabenack, the voice was not
But also,
a
he had
particularly
he
strong
had
voice.
he had to strangle it in order to give himself a sound that probably, if he sung in his natural voice, it probably wouldn't sound that interesting. Anyway, I was a big fan. Loved what he did with Mad Dogs and Englishmen. Love his first two solo albums. Actually, these first three. Khan is a really good record.
Carney, I love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the story of the Mad Dogs tour is just hair-raising. I mean, the one bit of the book I have read, because it was excerpted in Mojo,
Yes.
is Bill Janowitz's account
Yeah.
of the Mad Dogs tour, and it is just like
One-
breathtaking how they got it together.
I know. Mike John, one of our writers who wrote for the New York Times, he told me that Mad Dogs at the Fillmore East was the best show he's ever seen in his life. And this is a guy who's seen everyone, you know.
Yeah,
Is that why they
I mean,
recorded the...
That's where the album's recorded, I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly chaotic, but in the spirit of those times, it somehow worked, didn't it? Like a lot of sort of things that happened at festivals, live events, where you just think this is insane. Everyone's drug crazed, sleeping with each other,
But somehow
it worked.
still made it.
Yes,
The band I saw
Fleetwood
at
Mac.
Yes.
the band I saw at the Albert Hall was essentially a chunk of the Mad Dogs band, you know, that he kind of kept together.
And of course, a huge influence on Elton John, which was why...
Very big influence.
who did then sort of come back
at
to
the-
Leon's. Well, I'm not going to say rescue, but I think he
Helped
wanted
out.
to pay tribute
Yes.
to Leon, didn't he? So after this interview was recorded with Andy Gill from 1998, some years after that, Leon and Elton did an album together, which I don't know very well, but I remember seeing the pictures of Leon at that point. Looked like something out of Lord of the Rings.
Well, he always did.
We just didn't know Lord of the Rings. A Knight in White Sands.
He had grey hair when I saw him in
Yeah,
71.
mate, with the white hair was tremendous, wasn't it?
It really was.
It was a
Fabulous.
look.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah, so
yes,
Great.
very pleased to listen to that interview and hear all this stuff.
there's lots of interesting stuff.
And so far, the book's very good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
excellent, great. So, what have we got time
Just
for?
yet.
We do need to pay tribute to some fallen heroes.
Should we do that first?
Yeah, and I mean, how much time, Jasper? Realistically, have we got? Minus
None,
20
yeah,
minutes.
minus 20 minutes.
Minus 20 minutes. Okay, so let's use those minus 20
yes,
minutes.
yeah.
So we did lose Wayne Shorter last week, and I would ask you guys just to say something about this extraordinary saxophonist and the co-founder of Weather Report.
Sure. I mean, for me, it was those early Electric Miles albums, you know, In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew, which I just think of just fantastic records. And then he joins Weather Report, and it's I was anti-jazz rock at that time because I'd been put off by the Mahavishnu Orchestra, who I briefly loved and then decided I absolutely despised them.
The drugs wore off, did they?
That trip they've been on.
4 years later, he's very interesting. I mean, Richard Williams quoted Wayne Shorter telling Richard that he felt himself disappearing in Weather Report, and he did, because the first 2-3 albums, he is one of the most interesting solo voices. About 4 or 5 albums in, it's almost like he's not there. Very, very, it's very strange. And yet he sort of accepted it. First of all, one thing, he's earning more money than he ever earned in his life. I mean, for a jazz musician, earning that sort of money was pretty serious stuff. But also, it's kind of odd equanimity that he could just allow the massive ego of Joe Zawinul to sort of push him to one side. But marvellous player.
A marvellous player and fantastic composer as well. I think it's really worth saying that he composed just a number of just eternal jazz standards. I mean, ESP, Speak No Evil, Footprints, all of those are just wonderful pieces of music. And to combine that kind of composition with the improvisation that he did, I think he was a great. His tone isn't always my favourite, but as a musician all round, I think he's huge. And also managed to cross over, doing the jazz, fusion jazz rock stuff, but also playing on like Joni albums and doing all this stuff in a way that seemed totally natural and easygoing.
He has a way with a sparse melody, which is very rare in jazz players. He can just play like 4 notes and they hang there and work beautifully.
Great record with Milton Nascimento, Native Dancer is a lovely album.
Yeah, and his playing on the Joni Mitchell records, especially the one she did with Vince Mendoza, the string arrangements of his playing is beautiful on that.
She absolutely adored him.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that he had this very open mind around Weather. I mean, I really do love Weather Report, even if it's clearly Zawinul dominated. But when you hear Shorter playing within that funky cosmic sort of sound, I think it's very, very beautiful.
That funky cosmic sound.
Copyright Barney Hoskins.
And just thoroughly nice man by all accounts as well. I mean, I read a really nice piece on NPR. Michelle Mercer, his biographer, wrote a lovely tribute to him and just tells us a great story of like she's on a real deadline of getting the book done, and he's quite discursive normally in their interviews, but she's got like 2 weeks left and she needs to get some stuff nailed down, and then he sort of starts going off on one and his wife goes, Wayne, she's on a deadline, she's got 2 weeks, and then suddenly he just starts giving her exactly all the answers that she needs in perfect recall, perfect, it's just
sentences.
It's just very fun and yeah, big loss.
Two figures that we've lost more recently, just in the last few days, Gary Rossington of Leonard Skinner and the great David Lindley. So we've got pieces pertaining to Skinner and a lovely piece about David Lindley in which Stephen Rosen drops by Lindley's house in Claremont, and there's all these sort of extraordinary, old instruments around. I mean, many listeners will know Lindley from particularly his association with Jackson Browne over the years. I mean, you I'm sure will know his work.
I knew him from Terry Reid.
You knew, right. Of course, he's on the... Yes, of course.
Before Jackson, he was with Terry Reid, with Alan White on drums and Lee Miles from Ike and Tina Turner on bass.
Wow.
And, so I heard that sound... I booked Terry Reid when I was at Loughborough, and that was the lineup. I think Alan White, Lee Miles, and David Lindley, and so that sound. I mean, even though it was a pedal steel, not a pedal steel,
so
but
lap steel, yes,
that has been played by millions of people, particularly in country music, but he made it sound like nothing else.
Yes,
and so that was. I mean, I saw Terry a few weeks ago.
Did you?
Just before David died. In fact, we were talking about that lineup. I don't know if you've ever done a Terry Reid back pages, but his life story is extraordinary.
Yes.
But Lindley was a major part of that. In fact, he left Terry Reid to join Jackson.
You're a Lindley fan, I think, Martin.
Yeah, no, I really like his
He had a great sense of humour as well. You could think of his vocal on Stay.
Yes.
Yeah, on the Live Jackson album.
And his fiddle playing on cocaine is incredible as well.
He just added a personality to all the records he ever played on.
Yeah.
I mean, Terry Reid's River was when he was... That was the album when he was working with Terry.
Yeah, exactly.
But, he just added another personality.
Well, particularly added a real edge to, I think, a lot of Jackson's music, which some people would even say might be a bit bland at times. And then you've got these extraordinary things that Lindley is doing on things like Running on Empty, and so forth. I think it just gives it this sort of raw kind of edge that I absolutely love. He was a phenomenal player.
Fantastic.
And I think the tributes to him from everyone have been so fulsome. He was obviously hugely liked.
Yes, real eccentric. I think.
Yeah,
a savant kind of figure as well. I think. Gary Rossington, of course,
survived the crash.
He was the only remaining survivor, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he's one of the three who survived the plane crash.
Yeah. And he was the co-writer on Sweet Home Alabama.
Was he?
Yeah, and Simple Man, not Free Bird.
That must have helped pay the rent over the years.
It may have done. Yeah, saw Skinner at Nebworth. That was the only time I saw them. And they're just all these southern dudes with sort of hats. And
that old Grey was test special
filmed at Capricorn headquarters.
Yes, it was. It was a kind of PR thing for Capricorn.
Yes.
Had all those bands.
Anyway, so we now have even less time.
I just a couple of things to mention that's gone on is that last week we put in an interview with Ralph Hutter of Kraftwerk. Did I pronounce that?
You did a pretty good job. Yeah.
German speaker Jasper here.
German correspondent.
Which I just recommend you read, that everyone reads who's interested in Kraftwerk, because I think it may be one of the best interviews I've ever read with one of that band. Because Tim Lott, who's a very good writer, has turned into a very good fiction writer, was the writer concerned. And they talk as equals about things like Sachlichkeit and other critical things.
And what is that?
Objectivity.
This week, I just have one quote. It's Jack Good being interviewed by Maureen Cleave for the Evening Standard in '63 on seeing Tommy Steele. He says, "I hadn't been so excited since I saw a match between Spurs and Arsenal. The greatest thing since Olivier as Hotspur. I thought to myself, clearly this is the life." I love it. It's a Tommy Steele.
I love the Spurs, Hotspur.
It's another great Maureen Cleave interview. As you know, I'm a massive fan of Maureen Cleave.
Did you know Maureen?
No.
No.
And she's just very good at getting really interesting stuff out of people and then putting it in the pages of the Evening Standard. And that's really something. When anyone claims that American men invented music journalism in 1960, it's like I'm going, fuck off, read Maureen Cleave in 1963.
I'm a Nick Tosh's fan.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah. Though, actually, the awful thing about Nick Tosh stuff, he's just brilliant, but sometimes you really sing, and it just makes you slightly cringe in terms of the way he talks about women.
Well, him and a lot of writers.
But he's a fantastic writer.
Incredible.
Sonny Liston.
The Dean Martin.
I love his Sonny Liston book, Night Train.
I don't know.
It's fantastic.
I think the Dino book, Dean Martin, is a must-read.
Yeah. Also, Nick Tosh has just hung out with Jerry Lee Lewis in a way that most people simply couldn't have.
And survive.
Live to tell the tale. Yeah, it's a great book.
I think that's
I think that brings us to
close the day.
It does bring us to a close. So,
can I just ask one question, Rob? Because we've talked about all these monstrous worldwide hits. What artists did you work with that didn't it never happened for, who you thought could have been big?
Well, I can come back to Terry Reid. There's a thing that happens, and I have to tell my nephew this, but it hasn't happened to him yet. When you have phenomenal success with something you've done mostly on your own, which I did with Enya, he did with Adele. After Enya sold 13 million records for a record no one ever saw coming, you have this power that I can do anything I want. Anything I touch will turn to gold. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it in lots of other people, but I've had it in myself. And I thought, I love Terry Reid, and he's never had the success he deserved. So I'm going to make a record with Terry Reid, and it's going to be phenomenal. And I made the record. It didn't work, and I suddenly came back down to earth. Right. And it was something. It was a moment I think everyone who has a phenomenal success needs to have. And I'm still waiting for Jonathan to have it. But the Terry Reid album called The River I'm so proud of it as a record. And it is that once I had dinner with Chris Blackwell, we spent the whole dinner talking about our failures. It started with Jess Roden.
Yeah, Jess Roden, yes, absolutely.
So it's interesting you mention this because Robert Palmer, in a way, was one of those guys who did make it, because they're not dissimilar singers. I mean, when I hear Terry Reid, Robert Palmer, they're of that sort of British blue-eyed soul sort of thing. Yeah. And Robert Palmer made it, and all the Jess Rodens, Terry Reids.
I thought Jess Roden, because I saw him, he used to be in a band called Shakedown Sounds in 65. And I always thought, now this is, because he had what Rod Stewart had and what Stevie Winwood had. He had all of that wrapped up in one, and he looked great in the mod era. He looked fabulous. Yeah. And that's what started me and Chris talking about failures. Right. But Terry Helicopter Girls, another one that I thought was a terrific record. And I couldn't talk for 3 days when it didn't chart in the album charts. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I retired. I thought the highs don't get any higher. Yeah. And the lows are getting far lower.
Okay. On that happy note.
Okay, so just remains for me to say, do visit Rock's Back Pages, where subscribers can read over 50,000 articles and listen to over 800 audio interviews with people like Leon Russell. Check to see if your local library subscribes to RBP. If not, maybe suggest they take a free trial of the world's largest archive of music journalism. And thank you, Rob Dickins, for joining us today for what's been a really, really entertaining episode.
Thank you.
It's been great fun. Much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That concludes episode 148 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Rob Dickins. The hosts are Barney Hoskins, Mark Pringle and Martin Collier, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper Murison-Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.
We didn't cover much, but
we skimmed the surface. But then that's your fault for being in the business.
Sex Pistols, Malcolm McLaren.
Well,
not even mentioned. Bank Ellis.
Well, we would have been here literally for 4 hours.
Enya.